Hello guys, it's Moonfruit and I'm back with part 2, where we continue with the Acropora Eyecandy from the Leonardo's Reef's laboratory. This time I'm gonna cover all the Deepwater Acros, some very unique Acros that I've never seen before, as well as some really rare and valuable strains. If you haven't seen part 1, I covered some of the classic OG Acros, as well as the holy trinity of rainbow Acropora. So that includes all your Millies, Tenuis, and the whole Latistella group. And speaking of part 1, guys, you loved it so much, over 5,000 views, you were absolutely amazing in the comment section. I spoke with Leonardo, and as our appreciation, we've prepared a special promo for you guys that I'll talk about later in the video. But first of all, I'm gonna show you a couple of Acros that I could not squeeze into part 1 anymore, starting off with the one and only, the famous toxic green Acropora Florida. This guy was featured on Reef Builders many years ago. Jake Adams used to love this one, and I've only ever heard about it from him in his videos and his articles. It is literally so green, it makes a green Slimer look pale in comparison. And of course the shape is a prime example of a bottle brush Acropora, where you have many sub-branches that radiate outwards from the main branches. Here we have the Dillon's Purple Acropora. Purple corals have kind of lost their popularity in the hobby because they're not super impressive under blue LED lights. The purple color is always non-fluorescent chromoprotein, which means they look the best in white light. So Leonardo's Reef keeps this amazing purple acro around for all the people who like to enjoy their aquarium in a full spectrum light and just appreciate a solid purple coral. Then we have another Leonardo's Reef signature, the Blood Moon Acro, which is also one of the greenest acros you will ever see. It is on par at least with a green Slimer, but it has those bright hot pink corallites that glow really bright as well. It grows kind of like a staghorn, but a bit more corymbo, so more like a compact staghorn. It's absolutely amazing. Speaking of green acros, I'm gonna use this opportunity to segue into the next category of deep water and smooth skin Acroporas, where we start out with one of my all-time favorite acros, Acropora Suhartonoi. And while it basically only has one primary color to offer, it doesn't need a ton of light and is a great choice to add a splash of color to a more shaded area that still gets some decent flow. What really makes this coral unique though is the radical shape. It forms those really long branches with a single axial corallite and polyp on every tip. It also has almost no radial corallites and as such overall very few polyps, so it grows very slowly, but if you manage to keep it happy long enough, it will thank you with the craziest shape that will guarantee to stick out in any aquarium amongst all of your corals. Then we have a really cool purple Acropora Loripes. It's another stunning strain that I would still consider even just barely a smooth skin Acropora. Nonetheless, this is another candidate to fill a lower light spot of your reef tank if you aim to literally fill every square inch of your tank with Acroporas. Here we have a very similar species, Acropora granulosa. It is a small frag, but it packs a mighty punch with its insane gold coloration, purple tips, and it's very similar and easy to confuse with the Acropora Loripes I just showed you, but as far as I understand it, granulosa form more elongated axial corallites, which you can already tell this one is going for. This one was definitely one of the most unusual deepwater acros I have ever seen, not just here at the farm. It shows a really unusual coloration for deepwater species with a lot of red corallites, blue tips, and irregular blotches of orange all throughout the colony. Quite fascinating as well was the shape that goes beyond Loripes and granulosa with its clusters of very thin branches and an almost feathery appearance. For sure a really odd coral that I wouldn't mind a frag of in my own tank. This one had me scratching my head. I have no idea what it is. It kind of looks like Acropora turaki but grows much thicker branches. But I really wanted to show you guys this one because it has those beautiful blue polyps on every axial corallite. This one's a weird one. It's called the slime ball Acropora, and there's an ongoing debate whether this is actually a Montipora or an Acropora. But people insist that it is an Acropora due to the fact that it has the typical Acropora smell when you take it out of the water. Right next to it we have the super spiny looking Acropora forbesi, which is one of the very few Acropora species you can find in the trade. And I've saved the coolest one for last. This coral is considered an absolute unicorn. Its mere existence has been debated. It is the one and only Black Sabbath Acropora. I have finally seen it with my own eyes and it is absolutely incredible. As far as I'm aware, this Acropora cardius is the only black Acropora you can get. The tissue itself has no colors whatsoever, only the polyps are bright neon green, which overall give the coral a crazy contrast. Seeing the Black Sabbath Acro really gave me the feeling of going to a fish store and seeing corals for the first time. Finding a coral you have never seen before becomes a very rare experience, especially for me after 15 years in the hobby, thinking I've seen them all. But visiting Leonardo's Reef after about 8 hours on a train, they really did not let me down. I haven't just found one coral that I've never seen before, but multiple corals. And one other coral is this absolutely astonishing Abrotinoides. It is bright green and blue with gold corallites and red polyps. The overall shape of this guy really reminds me of the Australian variety I showed in part 1. And as if finding this really unusual color morph of a very difficult to keep Acropora was not enough, I have found an unbelievable 4th strain of Abrotinoides at the LR farm. This one was completely purple from tip to base. It had bright pink corallites, and this one looked a lot more like the Indonesian variety, which I've also shown in part 1. It looks like the new growth is already adapting to aquarium conditions by growing thinner branches, which gives me high hopes that this strain is easier to care for than the other ones. At the Leonardo's Reef's farm, they really love their ATI hybrid fixtures, and they also run them at a fairly full spectrum. So while I was looking at all the corals, I was being amazed by the large colonies, one of which was a large green Acropora humilis. However, it wasn't until after they switched the lights to blue when I noticed that this was not your average run-of-the-mill green humilis, if you can even call it that. It was in fact a gold humilis with green polyps and blue tips. A drop-dead gorgeous coral that I was not even aware was a thing. And once the lights were set to blue, I was absolutely distracted by all the 1 foot size colonies of Acropora millipora, hyacinthus and microcladus. But there was one coral that did not look like the others. Even with the flow on, you could tell that it had very thick, finger-like branches coming from a wider base than your typical corimbos or tabling Acropora. So naturally, I had to investigate. Once I dipped my camera under the water surface, I found the tapered, thick branches of what I can only assume is Acropora gemifera, and I was blown away. The pink coloration with the green polyps, an absolutely unreal species that you never find at stores, let alone people's home aquariums. But I'm very thankful to have found this amazing coral, and I'm very happy to show you guys because this is really something I have never seen before. The last coral that took me by absolute surprise was this one. Apparently, nobody ever paid any attention to this guy, and I was the first person to ever mention it or even recognize it. So Leonardo himself named it after me, and I'm not complaining. So I'm very happy to present the one and only Moonfruit Milka Acropora, which gets its name from the very cluster-like Milka-colored tips. And I'm sure the golden base and burgundy corallites have caught your attention by now. And if you pay attention to the details, the very tip of every single tentacle on those brilliant red polyps is glowing white. I have no clue what exact species this is, and I'd be very thankful for any guesses in the comments down below. But it doesn't matter, because if I had to choose a single coral amongst the hundreds of other species and strains and variations, as well as the thousands of frags at the Leonardo's Reef's farm, this would be my hands down favorite Acropora ever. And as promised earlier in the video, I have an exclusive promo code for you guys. Code MOONFRUIT is valid for all purchases on leonardosreef.com until the end of the month. It includes the whole what you see is what you get selection, as well as all the cut to order corals. There's no minimum order, but the code does stack with their automatic pack discount if you choose 4 or more corals, as well as their free shipping bonus. The Flaming Sunrise Speciosa. What a start into my last category of rarest and most expensive Acropora. It is famous in both good and bad ways. It is exceedingly difficult to keep. However, it is one of the most popular and sought after acros. If you manage to find a truly aquacultured frag, its unique shape combined with its equally unique and unusual coloration of teal with yellow corallites and polyps will make sure that this is the crown jewel of any Acropora collector. I was very lucky to be there in time to spot these few frags, because they usually sell out like hotcakes, even though they do come at a very hefty price point, and their scarce availability make this one of the rarest corals you could find at any aquarium store. I've covered some Acropora earlier, and on their own they're not the most common, but also not the most difficult to find corals. However, when a purple colony at the Leonardo's Reef's farm collided with a green colony, to their great surprise they found that they actually didn't sting each other, but instead fused together. About 2 years ago we first heard of a grafted Acropora from reef builders, and now I'm seeing this miracle live in the Netherlands, an absolutely surreal experience. Now they're trying to manually graft 2 halves of purple and green together. They're even experimenting by throwing in some Tropicana and Acro into the mix. But look at the 2 halves merging up close. Isn't that amazing to see? And the last coral I have for you guys is a tenuis. Yes, I withheld a tenuis from you guys in part 1. I showed you this cherry bomb and the Dolt Wisney last time, but in the background we have a much more interesting grafted tenuis. This one, however, was a wild phenomenon and came from Bali Aquariums. It's a mix of green and blue and has a super swirly pattern. I've actually had a first-hand experience with the same strain of grafted tenuis back in 2021 when I accidentally purchased it from an Indo import. But wild tenuis being wild tenuis, it was a very short-lived endeavor, so I'm even more happy to see that some sizable frags of this amazing coral are being grown and spread around the hobby. So guys, this was part 2 of my extensive Leonardo's Reef's Eyecandy tour. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave any and all questions and comments for Leonardo or me in the comment section below. I'm actually going back to the Netherlands in about 2 weeks to film some more, so I'll take all of that into consideration. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.